it's still a condition. You know, it's okay to say that you have it. It's okay to reach out for help. Let's talk a little bit about communication. It's really important when we are working with population that is struggling with behavioral health to kind of know how to communicate. There are 4 different forms of communication skills. There's the thinking. So as I'm talking to you, you're thinking about what I'm saying. You're listening. We're speaking. And then there's our nonverbal cues. How we process the communication. So right now, about 7% of what I'm saying in words, you're actually processing. 38% you're reading off of my voice tone. So if I'm starting to yell really loud, I'm probably going to get your attention a little bit more than if I'm just talking like this. So 38% you're listening to my voice tone, and 55% is the body movements, face and arms. How often do you get frustrated when you don't understand something? We often teach people the way that we understand things. So for me, I'm a very visual learner. So of course, I'm going to want to naturally go ahead and teach you something visually. That doesn't work for everybody. Some people, it might be oral, just hearing. Some people, they might need to have it written down. And then some people, it's nonverbal. Up to 80% of arguments are actually caused due to the tone of your voice and not what is actually said. I think my fiance and I would probably, kind of be a testament to that. So often it's the tone. I don't like the tone that he's taken with me, and then I get on the defensive, and it really has nothing to do with what he said, but it's how I'm hearing that tone of voice. And as we calm down, we sit down and talk about it, I'm like, oh, that's what you meant like 2 hours ago? And he's like, yeah, I was telling you that. And then I'm like, oh, okay, sorry. So I think that happens a lot even in the workplace, right? You might be stressed out and you're coming up to a coworker, I really need help with this, I'm really frustrated. They're gonna be like, whoa, why are you tagging me? But if you're like, hey, I really need some help, I'm really frustrated, you're probably gonna be more likely to help them if they have the calmer tone. So they might not actually be angry or mad at you, it's just the tone that they're hearing and how arguments are started. So there are some stages of behavioral escalation that I want to go ahead and talk to you guys about. The very first one is calm. The person is relatively calm, cooperative, we've got no issue. They're doing their thing, we're doing our thing. And then we have a trigger. A person experiences an unresolved conflict. This trigger triggers a person's behavior to escalate. How often do we have a patient that says, I really need my medication? And you're like, okay, I'll be with you in just a moment. I have an emergency over here. I'm going to get you your medication. Well, 5 minutes is kind of their limit, and then they start getting triggered. Well, I asked you 5 minutes ago, I really need to get my medication. I need to get my medication. Something has kind of triggered their behaviors. How often does that person then, if we don't get to them right away, start having the agitation? They're getting upset, they're getting unfocused, they're maybe starting to pace a little bit with us. Then it gets accelerated, the conflict remains involved. You're still dealing with an emergency with another patient, and we've got Mr. Smith over here that's now had to wait 15 minutes for his medication, and he's starting to escalate. At that point, Mr. Smith might get into the peak phase where he starts getting out of control. He might start slamming his fist down. He might start yelling at you, you're always late with my medication, I need my medication. He started to exhibit some severe behaviors. At that point, we really need to try to work on de-escalation if we haven't been able to. We want to get him back into the point where he can kind of vent about what's going on. He might start displaying some confusion. How often do we have it that after the person has de-escalated, they don't really remember what happened? You're like, well, Mr. Smith, next time you really can't swear at me like that. You really can't hit me. What do you mean? They kind of go into a little bit of a blackout phase. And then we always want to go ahead and recover. Once they're starting to de-escalate, you're going to want to go ahead, if possible, talk to them about the situation. How can we work on it better next time? And try to get them involved in some other activity. You don't want to just sit there continuing to dwell on what happened. But okay, it's time to go to bingo, it's time to go to lunch. Let's just kind of move on from it. Okay. So when we're doing some de-escalation, we have a process. You need to assess the situation in front of you. You need to adapt to it because not each situation is the same. You can't always handle each person the same way. And then we need to attend to the problem. I've got a little video here. Pull it up.
Hey, here's another safety tip from Vivid Learning Systems. My name is Chris, and I'm here to share some knowledge and help you connect workers with safety. Certain occupations are more at risk of exposure to violence. It's a fact. For example, employees working alone, working late at night, or working in high crime areas are all more likely to be subjected to an act of violence. It seems like common sense, right? And if you have workers who routinely deal with angry customers, you know how things can get out of control and that workers need a strategy for resolving those situations. That's where conflict de-escalation techniques come in handy. Anticipating potential conflict is important for preparedness, and there are many verbal and nonverbal cues to be mindful as the situations unfold. For recognition, here are some signs of conflict escalation. A person clenching his or her fist or tightening and untightening their jaw. A sudden change in body language or tone used during a conversation. The person starts pacing or fidgeting. A change in type of eye contact. The rooster stance. Chest protruding out more and arms more away from the body. Disruptive behaviors, such as yelling, bullying, actively defying or refusing to comply with the rules. So what can you do in order to help de-escalate a conflict situation? Here are some tips, and remember, this isn't a step-by-step list, but rather a menu of options that may prove useful. First, calm yourself before interacting with the person. If you're upset, it's only going to escalate the situation. Calm down and then begin to look at the situation and how you can intervene safely. Take a deep breath, use a low, dull tone of voice, and don't get defensive, even if the insults are directed at you. Becoming aware of your situation is also critically important. This can include other people in the room, objects such as chairs, tables, or items on a table, and the space around you, like exits or openings, and if you are blocking the person so that they may feel trapped. Try to look as non-threatening as possible. Appear calm and self-assured, even if you don't feel it. Maintain limited eye contact and be at the same level. Encourage the client to be seated, but if he or she needs to stand up, you should stand up also. Maintain neutral facial expressions. Place your hands in front of your body in an open and relaxed position. Don't shrug your shoulders. Don't point your fingers at the person. Avoid excessive gesturing, pacing, fidgeting, or weight shifting. Maintain a public space distance, which is about 12 feet or more. Make a personal connection. Something as simple as asking, "What's your name?" can diffuse a situation quickly. People respond positively to their own name, and it can make the dialogue more personal. Listening to the person's concerns. Empathy needs to be shown during conflict situation, even if you do not agree with the person's position. Expressing and understanding why that person feels a particular way will help resolve the conflict. Clarifying, paraphrasing, and open-ended questions all help to ensure that the person is aware you have understood their frustrations completely. Ask to take notes. Ask for their ideas or solutions. Help them talk out angry feelings rather than act on them. Shift the conversation to the future. Create hope, and you make yourself less threatening. Using what and we helps include the person in those future plans. Get them to say yes. It is very hard for someone to stay angry towards you if they are agreeing with you. No person, group, or set of conditions can guarantee that a conflict will proceed constructively. If de-escalation is not working, stop. If the situation feels unsafe, leave and call for help. Remember to be patient, calm, and aware of the situational surroundings should a conflict arise in your workplace. Most importantly, have a plan to protect yourself if the worst case scenario unfolds. How do you escape, defend your life, or protect other colleagues? Until next time, stay positive and stay safe.
Okay, so just going over some of the de-escalation techniques again that he was talking about. One of the first things when we come across perhaps one of our patients is really anxious or agitated, especially if you don't know them, ask for their name. Oh, I see that you might need some help. I'm sorry, what was your name? I'm Jessica. They suggest do not use nicknames such as sweetie, hun, babe. I know that if someone comes up to me like, hey babe, I'm instantly already going to be shutting down. I might respond a little bit better to something like sweetie or maybe one of my nicknames, but just be cautious. We don't know what they prefer to be called, so go ahead and ask. If they say, oh, well, my name is William. Oh, William, do you prefer to be called Bill? Bill? Oh, that's okay. So try to avoid nicknames unless they say that it's okay. Use the active listening, clarify, paraphrase, and use open-ended questions. Slow down and suspend the judgment. How often is it that we see maybe a coworker and one of our patients and they're having a disagreement about something. I know I'm typically going to go, oh, well, probably my coworker's worried about something, patient's kind of agitated about something, maybe, not too reasonable, but, we really need to suspend our judgment because they're obviously feeling something of a struggle. Try to give it your full attention as best as possible. Get them to say yes, as the video said. How often do we get in an argument with someone and then you realize they're like, well, don't you agree with that? And you're like, oh, well, yes, okay. And it instantly starts kind of calming us down. Don't use cliches such as calm down. I know when, say my mom and I might get in a disagreement about something, she has that tendency, bless her heart, but just calm down, Jessica, just go. And I'm like, okay, now we're out of control here. I think that happens to a lot of us, so try to avoid those sorts of words. Consistency and courtesy. Personal favorite of mine, the person you're dealing with at 10 o'clock at night deserves the same level of respect and courtesy of patient that you're dealing with at 2 p.m. It's easier said than done, but if we're working a double shift, we're tired, we're exhausted. At 2 o'clock, this person might have come up with me, demanding that they get juice, but they're diabetic, they've already had their juice for a day, and, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, we really can't give you any more. You're probably going to be a little more calm than when you're working on the second shift, and it's 10 o'clock, you've already been there, you're tired, you're exhausted, they've asked again, you're probably going to start getting more frustrated. So it's easier said than done, but we need to always give the same courtesy no matter what time of the day it is. And use a team approach, have support nearby, and know your limits. Some things that you also want to do when we're dealing with someone that's getting agitated or anxious, try to redirect them. There's many different ways to do this. If we have a patient yelling out in the hallway, okay, I'd love to talk, Mr. Smith, but do you mind if we go somewhere a little more quiet? Do you want to go for a walk? Can you show me where your room is? I don't know where your room is. Sometimes having that and being able to control the situation will help. And sometimes it's, just kind of getting them off the topic. Hey, I'm really thirsty. Would you like to get something? Let's go get a drink together. Sometimes trying to redirect them from the situation or perhaps where they're having the difficult episode is. When we're dealing with someone that is getting escalated, not only do we need to remember some of our techniques, but we also need to know about safe body positioning. When arguing, encourage the angry person to be seated as best as possible. If we can, try to go ahead and maintain kind of eye level with them. You don't want to be towering over them. Because it's just going to make them feel more defensive. But if we do have them pacing back and forth, it's probably going to start upsetting other people. More likely of a chance that they could go ahead and run if they're upset. While standing and facing the angry person, it's recommended to shift one side of your body to a 45-degree angle. If you guys end up having, or maybe some of you have, there's a lot of different trainings out there specifically around safe body positioning and restraints and protection of yourself. But one thing that I found in all of them that I've ever been through, it is true. They do say have your body at a 45-degree angle. So I'll kind of come over here. So if Elizabeth is a patient coming at me and she's really anxious and agitated, sorry, getting your space, I'm not going to be towering over her like this because it's going to make her more anxious, going to be more agitated. I'm not going to be towering over her like this and making her feel blocked in, because how often do we want to feel blocked in? Probably never. So we're going to want to go ahead and maintain some distance. If she wanted to run and charge at me, if I'm standing right in front of her, she's going to plow me right over. So I'm going to want to have my body at a 45-degree angle so that if she starts coming at me, I can go ahead and move faster one way or the other rather than being positioned directly in front of her. I'm also, if possible, I'm going to want to get a chair. I'm going to want to sit down. Elizabeth, what's going on? I hear that you're angry, you're upset. Hey, we're kind of in the hallway, it's a little loud. Do you mind if we go to your room? Can you show me where that's at? Let's talk. It's probably going to have a little bit of a better response than hovering over, standing right at her, different things like that. So they suggest 45-degree angle, kind of helps get you out of the situation. One other thing with your hands, I'm guilty of this, and I'll be on the next slide. So if I'm here with Elizabeth and I'm like, hey Elizabeth, what's going on? I hear that you're angry, something's upset with you. If I'm waving my hands in front of her, she's probably not going to enjoy that. Putting my hands on my hips, once again, is kind of a little bit of that rooster stance that I'm the one in power. Also, if I'm crossing my arms, probably saying that I'm not really listening. If I'm fidgeting, tapping my feet, all these things I'm personally guilty of, so I constantly have to be aware of it. Try to go ahead, stay open. It shows them that you're open-minded to what they're listening to. Also, go ahead and keep your hands open. Try not to put them on your hips. Try not to cross your arms, because a lot of how we're communicated and what you're looking at is someone's body stance. And it doesn't matter whether I'm smiling, happy, and chipper as can be. If I'm still kind of roostering over her, she's probably still not going to have the best response because she's reading a lot of my body language. Once again, a very angry individual may misinterpret physical contact or touching. So let's say if Elizabeth's really upset and I try to come over to hug her, well, one, that's going to get me in a bad position where she's going to be able to hang on to me and maybe I can't let go. Or maybe if I kind of touch her arm or touch her hand, maybe she's not a touchy-feely person. Maybe that doesn't help calm her down. So just be cautious of how someone else might perceive that. And once again, when we're talking to them, unless someone is to the point where they are full-blown physically aggressive, you're having to consider restraints. Don't trap them either by staying over them, and don't trap them in a corner. I know if I'm talking to someone, I'm not going to put myself in a corner. I'm going to want to have some sort of way out. We'll also suggest, not to put your back directly to a door, but kind of angle to it as well, so you have an easy way to get out, and you can see people that are coming in and out. Be aware, once again, not only of the nonverbal communication that they're giving you, so if they're kind of roostering, if they're pacing back and forth, like the video said, if they're clenching their fists, if they're clenching their jaws, I'm like, oh, okay, they look a little angry, but I also need to be careful of what am I giving off to them as well through my body language. Okay. There's just some more examples to you. This one, like I was saying, I'm kind of guilty of. So I might be there smiling, happy as can be, and I'm just someone that I constantly put my hands on my hips. It's just something comfortable to me. I got hips, it's a good place to rest them. But to a lot of people, it's going to show that I'm kind of defensive. I'm doing that little rooster stance. Hands in your pocket, kind of legs open. You're just kind of saying, I don't really care too much. If I'm tilting my head and moving around, probably not giving off the best signals. Having your arms folded, once again, showing that, you're kind of angry, you're agitated. So there's many different ways that people are not only hearing what we're saying, our tone of voice, but they're also looking at our bodies as well. Okay, let me show you guys another video. So when talking about working with someone with behavioral health conditions, talking about the communication and how we perceive it and how they perceive our communication, our body, and working in a situation where someone's pretty escalated, we also need to make sure that we're taking time to ourselves. As the video had said, kind of know what you can and cannot do, ask for feedback, ask for help when needed, take time to care for yourself. Those are all things that I think we all kind of struggle with. We're in this profession to care for people. For most of us, that's kind of where our heart and our passion is at. But also, that kind of wears us down a lot. The more tired, the more exhausted we are, it's going to be harder to deal with that patient, at 10 o'clock than it was at 2 o'clock. It's going to be harder not to show, hey, I'm kind of frustrated with you, I'm kind of tired with you. So there are times when we need to know when to stop and when to go. You need to understand when to continue putting your points forward and when to withdraw your words. Always try to show respect for the opponent's point of views. Know when to walk away and end a conversation. You can be polite but firm. When I first started off I'm a social worker, if I hadn't mentioned that. When I had first started off in the profession, I worked for children's services for many years. I was very young, right out of college. I can't tell you how many times I'd be on the phone with someone, they're yelling, they're screaming, they're swearing at me, and I'd just be like, okay, okay, all right, I'm just gonna kind of take this